Hi, everyone. So, today I want to talk about one of the early Christian heresies, one of the first ones that the church had to deal with. We've talked about Justin Martyr and apologists, like the apologetics that was going on, and how the church was responding to those outside of the church. But now we're going to look inward. I want to talk about Irenaeus, but before we get to him, I want to talk about his main opponents, or at least as far as the books that have survived through history where they focus. And he wrote a massive book called Against Heresies, and it generally focuses on Gnosticism. And so I want to talk about Gnosticism so we have an idea of what was it, or who were the people or groups that Irenaeus is talking about. So these Gnostics, what are they? The Gnostics, they're called Gnostics because it comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge. That's everything that they do, or generally all of the groups are commonly, it can be gathered together to understand it's all about knowledge. Salvation comes through knowledge and learning new insights. Some of the big figures that come up that Irenaeus talks about and what we know of the different leaders, people like Menander, Valentinus, Basilides, and Marcion. You probably might have heard of that name. Marcion, yeah, he comes up a lot. Now, some of the writings of the Gnostics are books like the Gospel of Thomas. We have the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Truth, Apocalypse of Adam, and the Sophia of Jesus, or Wisdom of Jesus. Some of the main figures among the church fathers who wrote against the Gnostics would be Irenaeus and Hippolytus, are probably the biggest ones. Clement of Alexandria did a bit, but a lot of scholars think that his critique was not very strong. Others are Tertullian, Origen, and Epiphanius. And there are almost all of the church fathers, to some degree or another, probably said something against Gnosticism, at least indirectly. Anyways, one thing, where do we understand Gnosticism? How do we understand it? One of the things that has really helped scholarship is in 1945, an Egyptian shepherd boy discovered a pot in a cave filled with a bunch of texts, which was actually 51 different Gnostic writings. And so many of them, some of them I listed above, were actually lost to history until that time. And so we are able to now actually understand Gnosticism on their own terms, to actually read what they say for themselves, rather than before that. The bulk of our understanding of Gnosticism came through people like Irenaeus and Hippolytus. So we had to rely on the critiques of them, what they said, or when they quoted them. And so there still is the question, are they accurately representing them or not? We don't know. Now we can actually engage on a more in a more proper way to understand this early controversy. So, where did Gnosticism come from? Where did it originate? Some scholars suggest that it actually could have originated among the Jewish groups that actually predate Christianity. Things like the book, like the Apocalypse of Adam, has a very heavy Jewish element to it that seems to be separate from Christian discussions. Now, it could have been edited later to include Christian elements, or maybe those aren't Christian elements. We don't know. But some scholars call this the Sethian school. The Apocalypse of Adam is generally a dialogue between Adam and his son Seth, where Adam's relaying this revelation that an angel is given to him. But among the church fathers, they look to a different origin. They look at Simon Magus as being the originator of this. Now, Simon, who is this guy? Simon is the magician Simon from Acts chapter 8, who was following Philip around and that was baptized by Philip. And then Peter and John show up in Samaria, lay hands on the people, they receive the Spirit, and Simon says, "Ooh, I want to do that too. Here's some money. Peter, give me this power." And Peter says, of course, "Your money perish with you." And Simon runs away. Or we don't know exactly. Luke doesn't tell us in the book of Acts. Irenaeus actually picks the story up. Is this an actual historically accurate account of what happened to Simon? We don't really know. Basically, this is our only source of what happened. So, but it's still a fun story, so I'm going to tell it anyways. So according to Irenaeus, in his book Against Heresies, in book 1, he says this, that Simon then set himself eagerly to contend against the apostles, in order that he might seem to be a wonderful being. Such was his procedure in the reign of Claudius Caesar. This man was glorified by many as if he were a god, and he taught that it was himself who appeared among the Jews as the Son, but descended in Samaria as the Father, while he came to other nations in the character of the Spirit. Now, it's possible through this that Irenaeus is combining later modalistic or Sabellianism with Simon and Gnosticism. We're not too sure there. So it could be he's trying to elevate the problems with Gnosticism by suggesting a proto-modalism as well. We will get into modalism in a later video when we talk about Sabellius, but that's not until the early 3rd century. We're still focusing in on the 2nd century here. So then, going on, Simon taught that angelic powers were jealous for domination. They wanted this power to control everything, and so that's then the reason for evil and strife in the world. Simon then had to rectify this. He had to bring an end to evil and and all the problems. So he might appear among men to be man, while yet he was not man, and thus he was thought to have suffered in Judea when he had not suffered. So here is then getting in what is called docetic Christology, that Simon, according to Irenaeus, Simon is saying that he then appeared to suffer in Judea, but he really didn't suffer. It just seemed like it. But it's this emphasis that he's the one who's bringing an end to this evil corruption. So that it was, where this comes from is that these angels are the makers of the world. They are the ones who created the world. Not all things, but the world. Because these angels or these powers are the lower powers, one of Simon being himself one of them, not an evil one, but a good one, who then came down to defeat them. And so they created things. So basically all of creation, all of physical reality is evil and needs to be done away with. We need to escape from the physical realm. We need to escape from our filthy, yucky body. And that's what salvation is about. And knowledge is the thing that helps us escape from our body. We need to learn the insights to know how to escape and follow Simon up to the realms of truth and knowledge. So what did the Gnostics teach? Well, I just want to say it's impossible to bring all of what the Gnostics teach into one thing. It would be like an atheist trying to say, this is what religious people believe. Well, what are you talking about? It's almost impossible for anyone to say that, because you can't say that a Christian and a Buddhist believe the same thing, or a Muslim and a Jew, a Zoroastrian, a Wiccan, all these different things. You can't kind of combine them all into one thing, into one simple package. And that's kind of what I'm going to try to do with Gnosticism. So just letting you know what I'm about to say is ridiculously simplified from the broad diversity and complexity of these early Gnostics, who most of them weren't even Christians and didn't even call themselves Christians. And so they're just completely separate sect altogether. I'm going to kind of categorize, or I'm going to summarize most of the commonalities among the groups that were associated among the Christians. That one of the things that they had is they appealed to Jesus and mostly the apostles for their authority. And we're going to see that that becomes an issue with Irenaeus later. So what were these things that these Christian Gnostics believed? Coming back to that idea, knowledge is the means of salvation. You are saved. You need to escape out of your body to be saved. And so that's what salvation is, escape from your body. And you need knowledge to do this. The God of the Old Testament is a different God from the New Testament. The God of the Old Testament, they called him the demiurge. He is the one who created all things. He is the creator, but he is an evil, vindictive, wrathful, tyrannical, angry God who has created all things. Not all things. He's created all matter, all physicality. Jesus, then, is another one of these divine beings on a similar level with the demiurge, who has then come down, become like man. Most Gnostics, there might have been some who said he actually was a man, but generally he just looked like a man. He really wasn't. And so then he lived among us, teaching this knowledge so that we could then escape the body. It's all about this deep knowledge. And we see some of this played out in, for example, the book, The Gospel of Judas, where Jesus pulls Judas aside on a few occasions to give him some secret insight, special from the disciples, where he tells Judas to betray him. He says, you need to betray me so that I can be killed, and that is how I am going to escape this body. And then later Judas will commit suicide, and then so he can escape the body as well. A similar trope shows up in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, where Jesus is married to Mary, and in that process he reveals these kinds of truths to her. So it's also important to recognize that the way this goes, it's not about Jesus trying to save all of humanity. When the demiurge created, he was just a low being. He's not the highest god. They're like way higher. There's levels and hierarchy of divine beings, and the demiurge is one of the lowest. He creates. He's kind of like the Satan, I guess. To put it in a way that us modern Christians can kind of understand. Maybe you could see similarities. Anyways, he creates all things, but he also imprisons spirits in bodies. These spirits are probably other beings, maybe a bit lower than him or the same as him. These spirits are imprisoned in bodies. Now, that's not where humanity came from. Humanity are just these animated bodies. Some of them contain a trapped spirit within the body. So not all people are these spirits. And again, the spirit is not the person. The spirit is trapped within a person or within the body. So there's a heavily dualistic, the spirit versus body, and the body equals evil, the spirit knowledge equals good. And so the goal is to get away from this filthy body so I can ascend into the pleroma being the realm of the divine, and ascend to higher levels. And this is achieved through knowledge. And some of this knowledge that's passed on includes things like passwords or rituals, magic spells, depending on the strain you're talking about, on how to then ascend through the levels of the pleroma. And so the pleroma being, in some schools, being this realm of 30 different gods that were that came from the mind, which came from the one being the source of all being, of all life, but he's separate from life. And you can't really say he is just the one. He is oneness. It just is. And so it is separate from all being. It is separate from all of this, from creation, because it cannot be part of it. Otherwise, it would be be corrupted. It cannot be contaminated by anything lesser than itself. If it was even in contact with or aware of anything lesser than itself, it would then become corrupted, because it would be thinking about something that's not the highest thing. So it can only be consumed with itself and only be among itself. And that's the goal for us, for the spirit, if you happen to be one. You might not be a spirit, right? This is kind of the silly things with Gnosticism. So then another element to this is that then Jesus descended to then look like humanity so that he could reveal this knowledge to all people. He appeared to be a person, and this is then one of the origins of what's called docetic Christology. Docetic comes from a Greek word dokeo, which just means to appear, to seem. So it says that docetic Christology is the idea that Jesus just appeared to be human. He only appeared to die on the cross. He really wasn't man. He really didn't die on the cross. He's just God with doing a puppet show. And so that's where that heresy comes from. We will see more docetic Christians show up. That heresy does come back again, but outside of Gnosticism. So most Gnostics would be docetic, but not all docetics are Gnostics. So just so that distinction. And so generally, that's kind of my summary of Gnosticism. We will talk about it a bit more, but generally just remember Gnosticism comes down to knowledge is the means of salvation. Salvation involves escape from the filthy body. It's that dualism, body, spirit. Body is evil, spirit is good. So, how did the church respond to this? We find that with Irenaeus is one of the best responses we have, and we will talk about that in the next video. I'm not going to talk about Marcion. I brought him up earlier in the video because Marcion, I'm going to talk about him when we talk about the canon of Scripture, and that's kind of a major element for him. As remember, Gnosticism, the God of the Old Testament is the evil demiurge. The God of the New Testament is this good Jesus or Christ who is come to save us. And so that's something that was big with Marcion. So we'll talk about him when we talk about the canon of Scripture. And Irenaeus, again, is very important for there. So first we're going to talk about Irenaeus, how he responded to Gnosticism, and we'll do that in the next video. Thanks.